Standing tall at Space Launch Complex 1 at the Kerbal Space Center. The Realistic Design Bureau is set to launch the latest Kerbal Data Relay satellite aboard a Falcon 9 launch vehicle. At Space Launch Complex 1, the Falcon 9 has just started the engine chill process in preparation for main engine ignition. Launching today is a Falcon 9 full thrust. We're launching into a parking orbit at an altitude of 868 kilometers. The Falcon 9 has just begun engine chill in preparation for strong back retract. The strong back is the thing you can see standing next to the vehicle, in which supports it until launch. And we have started strong back retraction. You can see the two clamps. You can see clamps on the side of the vehicle being released. And then the strong back will pull back away from the vehicle in preparation for liftoff. The clock is counting down. We're at T-minus 1 minute 50 seconds. We're at T-minus 1 minute and 52 seconds to liftoff. The strong back is being pulled away from the spacecraft, and we have transferred to internal power. The MechJub autopilot has also been enabled. We're at T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds. All is performing nominally. As the spacecraft prepares for liftoff from Space Launch Complex 1 at the Kerbal Space Center. Minus 1 minute 10 seconds. Transporter erector has pulled away from the vehicle in preparation for liftoff. T-minus 1 minute. The Falcon 9 will ignite its engines at T-minus 1 second. At T-minus 1 second and throttle them to full power in preparation for liftoff. T-minus 40 seconds. The vehicle is now being checked. All systems remain go for launch. The two Falcon 9 fairing halves are ready. T-minus 25 seconds to liftoff. Not anticipating any holds at this time. Gimbal check in progress. Gimbal checks complete. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, Falcon 9 engine ignition, and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket with KDRS A, the first Kerbal Data Communications relay satellite, launching onto a geosynchronous orbit above mission control. T plus 4 seconds into the mission. Falcon 9 performing as expected. Autopilot running. 9 Merlin engines burning as fuel as expected. Falcon 9 is now 1.5 kilometers in altitude at a velocity of 127 meters per second, T plus 1.5. 1 minute, 38 seconds after liftoff. T plus 1 minute, 50 seconds after liftoff. The spacecraft is performing nominally. Velocity now 190 meters per second, downrange distance approaching half a kilometer. Altitude 3 kilometers. 9 Merlin engines burning 30 units of fuel per second. Spacecraft is performing as expected. Falcon 9 flight body rates are within expected parameters. Approaching Mach 1. Mach 1. Vehicle is now moved beyond the speed of sound, T plus 2 minutes. Falcon 9 first day. Falcon 9, the 9 Merlin engines performing as expected. Downrange now 2 kilometers, altitude 9 kilometers, velocity 430 meters per second. Continuing to track the spacecraft as it heads downrange. Altitude now 14 kilometers, velocity 590 meters per second. Downrange distance 6 kilometers. Spacecraft has experienced max Q. Altitude now 18K. Spacecraft flying as expected. Falcon 9 now traveling downrange at T plus 4 minutes into the mission. Velocity 900 meters per second. 9 Merlin engines burning fuel as expected. We are now a quarter of the way through the first stage. We are now 3/4 of fuel remaining in the first stage. Experiencing throttle back to 66% throttle. Throttle back has been experienced. Falcon 9 now going through low G4, now has entered the low G phase of flight. Altitude 31 kilometers. Velocity 1.1 kilometers per second. Falcon 9 performing as expected. Vehicle body rates look good. Spacecraft fuel consumption rates look good. Engine fuel consumption rates look good. Engine fuel consumption rates nominal. Preparing for 1-2 SEP. Should occur shortly. Note, this is not a simulation of any missions, past or present. This is just a mission that I am doing. Standing by for stage separation. launching stage separation on the Falcon 9, first stage, and then ignition of the Mervac. SES just being the name, SES just being used for this satellite. Standing by for first stage cutoff. The throttle has maintained a throttle limited phase of flight. Altitude 56 kilometers, downrange distance 53 kilometers. Velocity 2 kilometers per second. Standing by for staging. Shutdown. Staging on the Falcon 9. We have a good first stage separation. And a good ignition on the Mervac. The Merlin 1D vacuum engine has powered up to full thrust. Burning 16 units of fuel per second. Good power up on the Mervac. Altitude 65 kilometers. Velocity 2 kilometers per second. Altitude now 71 kilometers. Downrange distance 78 kilometers. Preparing for payload fairing SEP. And we have payload fairing SEP. Good separation on the two Falcon 9 payload fairing halves. Locking the RCS tank on the spacecraft. RCS has been enabled on the main stage. The RCS will be used for reorientation. Merlin vacuum engine performing as expected, plus 8 minutes into the mission. Velocity 2, maintaining a velocity of 2 kilometers per second. Spacecraft performing as expected. The next launch is going to be a Delta IV carrying another KDRS satellite, KDRS B, into a geosynchronous transfer, into a low parking orbit and then a geosynchronous transfer. Velocity 2.1 kilometers per second, downrange distance 117 kilometers. We have deployment of the comms antenna. Apoapsis now 300 kilometers. Mervac has been throttled up to full thrust. Burning 25 units of fuel per second. Spacecraft experiencing nominal velocity. And we have a good shutdown on the Mervac. The Mervac has been shut down. And we are now into the reorientation process for the coasting phase. The two RCS visible there, fed by these two balloon tanks. There, and there. The reorientation process is underway for the coast to Apoapsis. I think that might be Elu over there. Now, those are the fairing halves. Spacecraft is into the reorientation process. In preparation for the circularization in the parking orbit. This parking orbit is where the spacecraft will reside until the transfer up to geosynchronous orbit. Plus 10 minutes into the mission. Orientation procedure is complete. Coast procedure is in works. The coast process is performing now, as expected. Preparing for circularization in orbit. Now, in theory, we could land the first stage, but I don't feel like it. Plus 11 minutes, 57 seconds into the mission, preparing for the orbital circularization burn. Mervac preparing for reactivation. Standing by for reactivation of the Mervac. Mission of the Mervac. Mervac engine powered up to full thrust. Mervac burning at a nominal velocity. Mervac burning nominally. Deployment of the satellite solar wings is underway. Mervac burn performing as expected. Solar panels beginning their turn to target are beginning their reorientation to face the sun, to face Kerbal. Solar panels receiving direct sunlight, and the Mervac is burning as expected, and we have and Falcon 9 has entered orbit. Approaching the end of the circularization burn. The first stage is entering the atmosphere. Preparing for shutdown. And we have shutdown on the Mervac. Plus 14 minutes into the mission. Spacecraft is in orbit, and we are preparing for the plot up to GSO. Spacecraft is in the coast phase. Almost 1 minute to the burn for geosynchronous transfer. Altitude is 376 kilometers. Preparing for the boost up to an apoapsis of 2868 kilometers. We have to get the apoapsis within a tight margin just due to the fact of the transfer is a fairly tricky maneuver. plus 16 minutes into the mission. The burn is in T minus about 30 seconds remain in the coasting period to the burn. Standing by for the burn. We want to perform the burn behind mission control, so that mission control will catch up with us. T minus 3 seconds, 2, 1. Mes 3. We have main engine start for the third time on the Falcon 9. The Falcon 9 main engine has powered up a third time. A second time for the burn up to geostationary orbit. The satellite's antennas have been set to target Kerbin initially. Preparing for main engine. The burn is continuing as expected. Burning 25 units of fuel per second. T plus 17 minutes into the mission. We have about half the velocity remaining now in the burn. We have passed by the node. About 15 seconds now remaining in the node burn. Orbital velocity, 2.2 kilometers per second in this burn. Standing by for burn completion. And we have a good shutdown of the Mervac. The spacecraft is now into a coast phase. Up to a maneuver node. At a very precise altitude. And the maneuver must take place at the precise altitude. Preparing for the burn. In about 6 minutes, we will have the third main engine start. For geosynchronous orbital insertion, we are 20 minutes into the mission. And we are now coasting to apoapsis, approaching T plus 21 minutes into the mission. We are approaching, the estimated burn time is about 20 seconds. The burn velocity is 345 meters per second. Maintaining comms with mission control as we approach the maneuver in minus 25 seconds. Approaching MES. Approaching MES3. T minus 5, 4, 3, 2. MES 3. The main engine has started up for a third time. And is now performing as expected. We are moving towards a targeted orbital period of about 6 hours. Approaching the end of the burn, and then the Falcon 9 tank will have orders to flip around and deorbit. And we have shut down. The RCS will perform the final bit of the maneuver. This flight plan includes a deorbit burn for the Falcon 9. And we have a separation on KDRS. KDRS has separated from the Falcon 9. The 2 main comms dishes have been activated. And the Falcon 9 is now moving into the deorbit sequence. The burn should take about 20 seconds. And we should be locking into retrograde momentarily. We are into the deorbit process. The deorbit burn of the Falcon 9 is in progress. And we are now preparing to initiate. Okay, why can't I switch to KDRS? And there we go. So at plus 26 minutes into the mission clock is done. And in the frame of your picture now is KDRS A performing a slowdown burn to achieve an orbit of about 1 day. To achieve an orbit 7 seconds faster than 1 day. The footage you're seeing now was recorded earlier in the stream. The new KDRS satellite hangs in its position in geostationary orbit and has begun its reorientation process to point back down to Kerbin. And its reorientation process has been completed. So now its roll process in the reorientation process will be completed. And its roll process has been completed. Here is the Kerbin system. There's Ilu, the most distant planet. And there's Moho, the closest planet. The KDRS satellite is in orbit, and we shall prepare another one to launch. This time aboard a Delta IV rocket. And this will be a night launch. The night launch up to a unknown parking orbit at this time. And the game crashed. Anyways, I'm Anti-Epics, signing off. Approaching stage separation on the Falcon 9, first stage. And then ignition of the Mervac. SES just being the name, SES just being used for this satellite. Standing by for first stage cutoff. The throttle has maintained a throttle limited phase. Flight. Altitude 56 kilometers, downrange distance 53 kilometers. Velocity 2 kilometers per second. Standing by for staging. Shutdown.